So it is no secret that Bethesda have been criticised over the years for their poor writing, with each game entry seeing a further decline. For a long time, fans have called out for the studio to recruit new talent in their creative department, and now it appears that they finally reacted, just maybe not the way that fans had hoped. According to this article, Bethesda have recently hired John Dombrow as their senior quest designer. For people not familiar with his work, he was one of the main writers for BioWare on two of their most recent entries, Mass Effect Andromeda and Dragon Age the Veilguard. Both of these games received much criticism, with most of it being in regards to the poor writing in both entries. Dragon Age the Veilguard received particularly harsh reviews due to some of the subjects covered within the game's story. Bethesda's reliance on open worlds and legacy lore has long masked its weak storytelling, and for many, Starfield was the last straw. Games like The Witcher 3, Baldur's Gate 3 and Red Dead Redemption 2 have raised the bar for writing, exposing just how far Bethesda's storytelling lags behind its competitors. Bringing in the former Veilguard writer is Bethesda's way of bridging that gap. But will it work? In this video, I'm going to explain why Bethesda's writing has declined over the years, where they struggle most, identify why it's essential they improve, and I'll also cover John Dombrow's resume, past record, and answer the question, is he the solution to Bethesda's writing woes? Well, let's get into it and find out, and of course, as always, consider subscribing. So why do Bethesda need new writers now? Why are these issues only evident in recent times? Well, for that to make sense, we need to identify why their writing declined over the years. So back in '94, Bethesda released The Elder Scrolls I: Arena. This entire game was made essentially by one man, the late Julian Lefay. Alongside Ted Peterson and Vijay Lakshman, they began making the first Elder Scrolls game. Originally, it was just supposed to be a fighting game, but once they started adding the stats, the decision making, the team building mechanics, they noticed it was looking more and more like an RPG over time, and thus they decided to make The Elder Scrolls, and its world was born. The first game was a rough draft, and the sequel, Daggerfall, would expand much further on the lore and the history in the world of Tamriel. With Daggerfall, Ted Peterson and Julian Lefay didn't just make a game, they built the foundation of an entire universe, crafting the vast living world of the Elder Scrolls from the ground up, the world that we know and love today. So it's important to note that everything about the series was made by these men. Anyway, fast forward to 2002 and Morrowind released under the direction of Todd Howard, and joining the team was a man named Ken Rolston. Now Ken Rolston was a veteran tabletop RPG designer, before joining Bethesda as lead designer on Morrowind and Oblivion. Now at Bethesda, he shaped the game's factions, their quests and the lore, bringing his tabletop philosophy of player freedom, moral ambiguity and layered storytelling into the series. His input was hugely important in Morrowind's success, which is considered not just one of the best written Elder Scrolls games to date, but also one of the best RPGs. He would then help on Bethesda's next project, Oblivion. When working with other writers, he would provide them a framework, a guidebook for how they would set up their quest lines. He'd include a basic plot summary, different branching choices, the story and lore of what they were writing about. Basically, he'd give the writer the outline and let them flesh it out from there. Now this was essential. One of the major areas he covered was the factions, and one of the factions in Oblivion was the Dark Brotherhood, which was given to Bethesda's current lead writer, Emil Pagliarulo. Now under Ken Rolston's leadership, Emil would follow the guidance that he was provided, and this faction storyline is widely considered one of Bethesda's best to date. So much so, Emil ended up getting a promotion. So although Emil was credited with the Dark Brotherhood questline, it's important to note that Ken Rolston gave him the foundation. Now after Oblivion released, Ken Rolston left, as did Julian Lefay and Ted Peterson. So all of this incredible writing talent had just up and left, and that's when Emil Pagliarulo took over. Bethesda suddenly went from having a giant team of talented writers to relying almost on one person. The last thing I just want to quickly touch on is when Bethesda acquired the Fallout franchise. Like how the Elder Scrolls universe was created by others, the Fallout world was developed by Tim Kaine, and Bethesda would take that established lore and run with it. So up until this point, we have two incredible universes in the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, with deep established lore. But the issue is, the talent who created these worlds are no longer there to add to it. So after Emil became lead writer, he would add his own stories and side quests to new entries, such as Skyrim, Fallout 3 and 4, but in truth, the storytelling was pretty weak. Fallout 3's main plot had more holes than Swiss cheese. Only 30% of players completed Skyrim's story, and Fallout 4's story, well, it's often ridiculed online. Side quests were not much better, but the thing that masked all of this poor lackluster storytelling, the lore of the Elder Scrolls and the lore of Fallout, built by those who had already left. Fallout 3's story sucked, but its world was incredible. Skyrim's characters were forgettable, but its map was outstanding. These already established IPs, with their rich history, would paper over the cracks. Add to this, players back then didn't expect both quality and quantity. Side quests were often shallow, simple fetch missions or filler content that players tolerated in exchange for massive open worlds. That was the norm back in the early 2010s. You either got 200 generic side quests in a massive open world, or a short, well-written story in a linear game. Quantity or quality. Never both. Then, in 2015, The Witcher 3 rewrote the rulebook, delivering side quests with real stories, choices and consequences, raising the bar and making Bethesda's formula feel outdated overnight. They not only outshone Bethesda's side quests in quality, but also somehow managed to match them in quantity. After this game, we would see other games match this new standard, from Red Dead Redemption 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance, Baldur's Gate 3 and many others. Nowadays, having good writing in an open world RPG was no longer optional, it was mandatory. So let's fast forward to Starfield. This was Bethesda's newest title and there was no established lore. Without this, Emil Pagliarulo would have to build a new setting himself from scratch. It didn't really work. He leaned on uninspired humans in space tropes. So cowboys in space, pirates in space, and reskinned Earth culture, so like Starbucks in space and banks in space. Instead of alien civilizations or cosmic mysteries, players found copy-paste factions, bland towns, and forgettable, often procedurally generated side quests. Combined with repetitive exploration, the result felt shallow and uninspired, with world building and writing widely regarded as Bethesda's weakest to date. Now when you look at other space worlds like Mass Effect or Star Wars among others, there is so much world building, and it's why fans love them. How Bethesda only landed on humans in space is beyond me. I've done a deeper video on this subject here, but here's the main takeaway. Without the established lore, as was provided with the Elder Scrolls and Fallout, Emil showcased that he did not have the talent to make up the ground, and his weaknesses were brought to the forefront. Add to this, he just couldn't keep up with the standards in video game writing that was introduced by games like Witcher 3, and he continued writing these monotonous fetch quests that gamers found outdated. Now, just to quickly touch on Emil Pagliarulo, he did a speech once where he taught aspiring game writers his philosophy.
So let's say, okay, we're going to write the great American novel. It's going to be this thick. And on every page will be written comedy and tragedy, and it'll be wonderful, it'll be amazing. And you're going to give this book, this great American novel, to the player. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to rip out every page and make paper airplanes out of them. And they're never going to see your story. They are going to spend 30 hours making shacks.
So, in other words, he's saying there is very little point writing an incredible story and putting too much effort into it because most players won't bother to read it. That's an insane take from a lead writer. He should want to write the best story regardless because it's what writers do. They write stories. Besides this, he has 3 rules that he follows, which are:
KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Write what you know. Great games are played, not made.
So his KISS mantra is where he tries to simplify stories and tries not to have more than one central theme, as it might confuse players. Black and white writing. So the good guy is good just because he's good, but then the bad guy's evil just because he wants to be evil. Like the Enclave in Fallout 3 asking the player to poison everyone. No reason, no motive, just evil for the sake of it. Now, the issue is, gamers are actually more intelligent than ever now, and they really do crave deeper, more complex stories, especially in RPGs. Witcher 3 handled morally grey areas, Baldur's Gate 3 gave players complete freedom, and Expedition 33 has wowed fans with its dark tones. So, Emil is out of touch with this KISS mantra, and this way of thinking is now outdated. Write what you know. Well, we saw that in Starfield as he literally just took what he knew, which was America, and moved it to space. He stuck with the familiar, Spacers, Starbucks, Terra Brew, and Wells Fargo, Galbank. And that familiarity made the writing feel unimaginative. And finally, good games are played, not made. Now, I can totally see where he's coming from with this, but the problem is, modern Bethesda titles lack any RPG decision making, so he's sort of working against that. Role-playing freedom has been stripped away over the years at Bethesda. For example, in Morrowind, you could kill main quest NPCs, faction leaders, even essential characters, and the game would adapt to your choices. Later titles like Fallout 4 and Skyrim scaled that back, instead focusing on linear plotlines. Nowadays, player freedom and choice consequence is more popular than ever, as games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Witcher 3 have shown. So in short, for a long time Bethesda have needed to bring in new writing talent as their current setup has grown stale and has limitations. Their philosophies that they stick to have also grown outdated. Hopefully I've explained why Bethesda needed to expand their writing team. John Dombrow is the new man tasked with elevating Bethesda's writing, but is he the right man for the job? Well, let's take a look at his track record. At BioWare, he worked on Davrin's story arc and the Veilguard storyline in Dragon Age the Veilguard, questlines that often felt one-dimensional, black and white, and juvenile. Exactly the same weaknesses that plague Starfield. His credits also include co-leading writing on Mass Effect Andromeda and serving as senior writer on Anthem, two games widely panned for shallow characters, poor dialogue, and uninspired storytelling. That's especially disappointing considering that both the Mass Effect and Dragon Age series were once celebrated for some of the best, most mature writing in RPG history. When you look at the Mass Effect trilogy, the Dragon Age series, these games were popular solely because of their great writing, their complex characters, and their deep role-playing mechanics. They didn't have the best graphics or the best gameplay, but the writing elevated these titles to huge success. Mass Effect Andromeda and Dragon Age the Veilguard were both poor in these departments, and it essentially brought about both series' demise. Dombrow walked into two franchises that were flying high and was part of the writing teams that delivered their weakest entries. Now, to be fair, he wasn't the only writer, and he did contribute to better received projects as well, like Telltale's Game of Thrones and BioShock Infinite's expansion, Burial at Sea. But when you look at the major franchises he touched at BioWare, the pattern is clear. His style leans to simplistic, predictable, and risk-adverse writing. The same issues that fans already criticize in Bethesda's current writing under Emil Pagliarulo. Instead of bringing in a bold new voice to push the studio forward, Bethesda may have just hired another Emil. As I identified earlier, Bethesda struggle at writing complex stories with memorable characters. They struggle with RPG mechanics and decision making in their games. They needed an expert in those areas where they struggle to come in and help the team out. John Dombrow doesn't seem to have much experience in any area where Bethesda struggle, and it doesn't appear like he'll help fill in the gaps. And that's the real problem. Bethesda desperately needed someone who can close the gap with studios like CD Projekt Red, Larian, or Rockstar, teams that are delivering mature, complex stories that set the modern standard. Hiring Donrow feels less like a leap forward and more like a sideways move. Bethesda have fallen so far behind in their writing compared to other AAA studios, and whilst I think it's admirable that they're expanding their writing team and accepting that they do need to make changes, I just wish they would dream a little bigger. Go look at the team behind Tainted Grail, or the team behind Fallout London, or even go and poach someone from one of the big boys like CD Projekt Red. Go find the top talent and go get it. Identify what you're weak at and find someone who's strong in that area, who can help improve the studio. It's like having a soccer team. You have 5 good attacking players but no good defenders. Go out and recruit new defenders to help improve the team. Don't go out and buy another 5 attackers, as it won't fix the problem. That's what I feel they've done with hiring John Dombrow, added more of the same, bringing in a writer who struggles exactly where Bethesda struggles. I'm not sure this will help. But look, this is one man's career, and I know that he will have had to work within the parameters given to him by higher ups at BioWare, so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I played the Game of Thrones by Telltale Games, and it did have some incredible writing, so I know there's talent there. But until we see his penmanship in The Elder Scrolls 6, I will reserve my judgment and not be too harsh. When you look at Davrin's questline in Dragon Age the Veilguard, it was one of the better storylines, I would say, and the Veil Jumpers was okay. Again, it was very cartoonish, good and bad. Like, it was very predictable writing. You knew who was going to be the bad guy, you knew who was going to double cross you, very straightforward, but it wasn't the worst writing, and he has done other projects as well to some success. Also, because he did work on Dragon Age the Veilguard, some people will link him with the Tash character and they'll start going on about DEI and gender politics, saying that Bethesda have gone woke, but just to be clear, he had nothing to do with that character or their plotline, so we can't really use that against him. It's a weak argument as it had nothing to do with him. But the only thing we can judge him on is his past work and his record, and based on the stats presented, right now, it doesn't make the best of reading. But anyway, that's it for this one, but what do you guys think? Do you feel John Dombrow is a good addition to Bethesda? What are your thoughts on Emil's past work? And do you think The Elder Scrolls 6 will see a huge improvement in its writing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great, and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching. Av out.